So I, female 31, feel like my husband's entire family thinks I'm some paranoid control freak, and I honestly don't know what to do anymore. My sister-in-law keeps asking where we keep our spare key, and now I found out she's been sneaking around our house when we're not home. Am I the idiot for refusing to tell her where it is? Okay, so some background. My husband Jake, male 33, and I have been married for 3 years, together for 5. His sister, let's call her Emma, female 29, lives about 15 minutes away with her husband. She's always seemed pretty put together, like she has her life figured out way more than I do most days. But here's the thing. I'm probably being paranoid, but I have reasons. When I was 23, my cousin literally stole my identity, got hold of some documents when she was helping me move, and opened credit cards in my name. It was a nightmare that took me 2 years to sort out completely. So yeah, I'm weird about family members having access to my personal stuff. I know that sounds crazy, but once you've been burned like that. Anyway, this whole thing started maybe 2 months ago. Emma came over for our usual Sunday dinner, and while we were cleaning up, she casually asked where we keep our spare key. Said something like, just in case there's an emergency and you need someone to check on the house. I gave some vague answer about how we haven't really figured out a good system yet. But then she brought it up again the next week at Jake's mom's barbecue. And then again like 2 weeks later when she stopped by to drop off some books. Each time I basically dodged the question, and I could tell she was getting annoyed. She started making these little comments about how some people are just naturally more trusting and stuff like that. Nothing super direct, but definitely pointed, Jake kept telling me I was reading too much into it. His family is really close. His dad bailed when Jake was 12, so he basically became the responsible older brother who keeps everyone happy. He said Emma was just being helpful and I was making it weird. But then last week, oh man, I was getting the mail and my neighbor Mrs. Patterson called over from her garden. Anyway, she mentioned that she saw Emma doing some kind of security check on our house a few weeks ago when we were both at work. I asked what she meant exactly, and guys, this is where it gets weird. Mrs. Patterson said Emma came through our side gate, walked all around the house, tried the back door handle, and was putting her hands up to the kitchen window like she was trying to look inside. Mrs. Patterson thought Emma was being helpful, checking for break-ins or whatever. But here's the thing, no one asked her to do that. We never mentioned anything about wanting security checks. And honestly, there's nothing valuable visible from that kitchen window anyway. Just our coffee maker and some mail on the counter. When I brought this up to Jake that night, he immediately got defensive, said I was reading too much into normal family concern, and that Emma deals with enough stress without me treating her like some kind of criminal. He literally shut down the conversation when I tried to explain why this felt off to me. And now, At the last family gathering, Emma made multiple passive-aggressive comments about trust issues and how real family doesn't keep secrets from each other. She didn't say it directly to me, but loud enough that I definitely heard it. Jake's mom even gave me this look like I was being difficult. The thing is, maybe I am being paranoid. Like, Emma has never done anything actually bad to us. She's always been nice, brings us leftovers sometimes, remembers our anniversaries. But something about this whole spare key thing just feels wrong. I don't know, am I just projecting my own issues onto Emma? Jake thinks I'm being cruel, and honestly, his whole family probably thinks I'm some paranoid weirdo who doesn't trust anyone. But also, why does she need to know where our spare key is? We've never had an emergency where that would have mattered. And the sneaking around our house thing, that's not normal, right? I've been losing sleep over this because I hate conflict, but also something in my gut is telling me not to give in on this. Jake barely talks to me about his family anymore because he says I always find something to complain about, which honestly really hurts. Am I the idiot for refusing to tell my sister-in-law where our spare key is, even though it's causing problems with my husband's entire family? Information to add. Since people are asking, no, we don't have any expensive stuff visible from outside. Our house is pretty average, nothing fancy. The only thing you can really see through that kitchen window is our mail pile and coffee maker. That's why the whole looking through windows thing struck me as so weird. To answer the questions about Jake's reaction, he's always been the family peacekeeper. His dad left when he was 12, and his mom was a mess for a few years. So Jake basically had to become the responsible one who keeps everyone happy and avoids problems. I think he's just trying to keep the peace like always. But it sucks feeling like he's not on my side. For those saying I should just give her a fake location, honestly, I thought about it, but then if there was a real emergency and she couldn't find it, I'd look like even more of an asshole. Plus, knowing Emma, she'd probably figure out I was lying, and that would make everything worse. A lot of you are asking about Emma's husband. He seems fine. Pretty quiet guy. Works in some kind of consulting business. Actually, I think he and Jake do some work together occasionally, but I don't really know the details. He's never been anything but polite to me, but he also doesn't really talk much at family gatherings, so who knows. Now for the first update. Well, you all called it. Every single one of you was right, and I feel like such an idiot. I tried talking to my husband again yesterday morning over coffee, and he literally cut me off mid-sentence. I started to bring up his sister and the whole key thing, and he just shut me down saying, "Not this again." I told him his sister was literally trying our back door when we weren't home. Mrs. Patterson saw her. This isn't me being paranoid, and he got all pissy saying I was being paranoid and cruel about someone who's already struggling. That's when something clicked. The way he said, "already struggling," like he knew something was going on but wasn't telling me. So I decided, fuck it, I'm calling Emma directly. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? Famous last words, I guess. She answered on the second ring, and guys, she sounded like she'd been crying. Her voice was all shaky, and when I asked if everything was okay, she just completely broke down, like full-on sobbing on the phone. Turns out she's been having these horrible fights with her husband almost every night for months. She said things have gotten really bad, and she was actually trying to get into our house to hide when things got scary at home. The whole "just wanted to sit in your backyard" thing was complete bullshit because she was too embarrassed to ask for help directly. She told me she was checking if our back door was unlocked so she could wait inside when things got dangerous at home. Those were her actual words. Dangerous. My heart just sank hearing that. Emma kept apologizing and begging me not to tell Jake because she's too ashamed that her marriage is falling apart. She said she learned from watching her mom stay in a bad marriage that women should just deal with it, I guess. That asking for help meant admitting failure. Emma also said sorry for all those comments about trust issues at family dinners. She said she was hoping I might be someone who could help her, but when I kept being suspicious about the spare key thing, she figured I wouldn't want to help. I felt so horrible. Here I was thinking she was some kind of weirdo trying to snoop through our stuff, when really she was just trying to find somewhere safe to go. But then I confronted Jake about it that evening, and that's when everything got even more fucked up. He immediately looked guilty when I brought up what Emma told me. It turns out Emma had told Jake she was having marriage problems weeks ago, but she hadn't told him about feeling unsafe or trying to get into our house. When I confronted him with what Emma told me about things being dangerous, that's when he admitted he knew more than he'd let on. But even he didn't realize how bad things had gotten. But here's the really messed up part. When Jake mentioned Emma's husband was his business partner, I thought he meant the occasional consulting work I vaguely knew about. But then he told me something that completely shocked me. This guy controls 40% of our income. For 2 years. I had no idea how dependent we'd become on this money. Jake had always just said his side consulting was going well, but he never told me the specifics or how much we were relying on it. Apparently this business brings in like 40% of our household income, and we've been using that money to cover our mortgage and car payments for the past 2 years. Jake admitted that if Emma's husband gets pissed about marriage interference, he could basically destroy Jake's entire side business, and we'd be screwed financially. Jake's terrified we won't be able to pay our bills without that income. So basically, my husband has been letting me think I'm some paranoid, crazy person for weeks, while knowing his sister was in actual danger because he was worried about money. I don't even know how to process this. Like, I get that losing 40% of our income would be really bad, but his sister is getting abused, and he's more worried about his business contracts. And he let me feel like shit for not trusting family, when really I was the only one actually looking out for Emma's safety. I'm so angry and confused, and I don't know what we're supposed to do now. Emma's still in that house with her husband, and now I know why she was so desperate to get into ours. But if we try to help her, we might lose a huge chunk of our income. And honestly, I don't know if we can afford that. God, I feel like such a terrible person for even thinking about the money when she's in danger, but also like, we have our own bills to pay too. I don't know. Everything's just a mess right now. Part of me wants to tell Emma she can just come stay with us, but what if her husband retaliates against Jake's business? What if we end up losing our house because we can't make the mortgage payments? I hate that money is even a factor here, but it is, and I don't know what the right thing to do is anymore. Edit. Since so many are asking, yes, Emma's husband does sound abusive from what she told me. She said he gets really controlling when he senses her pulling away, and the fights have been getting worse. She didn't go into specifics, but honestly, I was too shocked to ask for details. For those asking why Jake didn't just tell me from the beginning, apparently this is typical for him. He thinks keeping secrets protects people, but really it just makes everything worse. His family has this whole dynamic where they avoid difficult conversations and just don't deal with problems directly. It's honestly pretty messed up now that I think about it. Now for the second update. You all called it. Things got so much worse, and I honestly feel like I'm losing my mind. So after my last post about finding out Emma was actually trying to escape an abusive marriage, Jake and I had this long talk about what we should do. I mean, we couldn't just let her stay in that dangerous situation, right? Even with all the money complications and everything. After staying up most of that night, talking through our options, and honestly freaking out about the money situation, we realized we couldn't live with ourselves if something happened to Emma because we were too scared to help. Jake decided to take the financial risk. We figured we'd rather struggle with money than have Emma's safety on our conscience. We decided to offer her our spare room, just temporarily. I was really clear about that part because my mom got totally screwed over by family members who promised short-term help, like 3 different times when I was growing up. Cousins who needed just a few weeks and then stayed for years, eating our food and never contributing anything. I watched my mom stress herself sick trying to help people who just took advantage of her kindness. So I told Jake we could help Emma, but it had to have clear boundaries. 2 weeks maximum while she figures out her next steps. He agreed and called her that same night. Emma said yes immediately, like she didn't even think about it. Just started crying and saying we were saving her life and she just needed 2 weeks maximum to get her head straight and figure out what to do next. Emma showed up the next day with this tiny little suitcase and kept thanking us over and over. She said she'd waited until her husband left for a business trip, packed just the essentials, and left him a note saying she was staying with family for a while to think things through. She was terrified he'd show up at our door, but somehow he didn't, though Jake started getting weird business calls from him almost immediately. I actually felt really good about it, like we were doing the right thing and helping family in a crisis. She seemed so grateful and relieved. That was 8 months ago. The whole time Emma was staying with us, we were basically expecting Jake's business partnership to fall apart. Somehow her husband kept the business relationship going, even though his wife was living with us. I think he was hoping if he didn't make it about the business, Emma would eventually come back. But the calls got more frequent and more intense as the months went on. And I could tell Jake was constantly stressed about when the financial retaliation would finally hit. I'm not even kidding. 8 months. It started simple. At the 2-week mark, Emma came to us crying, saying she hadn't been able to save enough for an apartment deposit yet. She needed her first month, last month, and security deposit. And with her not working, it was impossible. Could we please give her just 1 more month? Jake immediately said yes before I could even respond. When I tried to bring up our agreement, he pulled me aside and said pushing her out when she was still so hurt would be cruel. I mean, what was I supposed to say to that? So I agreed to 1 more month. Then Emma got a part-time job at some retail store after like 3 weeks. I was excited because I thought that meant she'd start contributing to groceries at least, or start saving for her own place more seriously. But no. Every time I brought up timelines or helping with household expenses, she'd get all teary and talk about needing to build up her savings and how she was still so emotionally fragile from everything she'd been through. Meanwhile, and this is what really started pissing me off, she kept buying stuff for the room, like decorative pillows and wall art and this fancy diffuser thing. I'm talking probably $200 worth of stuff over a few months. If she had money for that, why couldn't she at least throw us $50 for groceries once in a while? Every time I tried to talk to Jake about it, he'd shut me down. She's been through so much, he'd say. We can't push her when she's still healing. It was like he completely forgot we had our own bills to pay. 1 month became 2, then 3, then 6. Emma kept finding new reasons why she wasn't ready to move out yet. First it was saving money, Then it was that apartments in her price range were too dangerous. Fair point, actually. Then it was that she needed to work on herself before she could handle living alone. But she was buying more and more stuff for the room, making it look more and more like, well, like it was her room permanently. I started feeling like a guest in my own house. The worst part was when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, mentioned seeing multiple furniture deliveries for Emma's room a few weeks ago. And then Jake's mom made some comment during a phone call about how Emma had been telling everyone she was finally in a stable living situation. That's when it hit me. Emma never planned for this to be temporary. She'd been telling people it was permanent while telling us it was just until she got back on her feet. Last week, I finally sat down and went through our bank statements and household budget, something I should have done months ago, honestly. Emma has been working steadily for 5 months. 5 months of regular paychecks, and she hasn't contributed a single dollar to our household. I brought this up to Jake with actual numbers. I told him she'd made about $4,000 in the last 5 months but hadn't paid us anything for food, utilities, or rent. Jake got all defensive about her bad situation and how families should support each other, and I snapped. I waited until Emma was at work the next day, called a locksmith and had all our locks changed. Then I posted our spare room for rent online with immediate move-in available. Within 3 hours, I had a college student who could move in that same day and pay first month's rent up front, cash. Emma came back from work around 6 p.m. and her key didn't work. She started pounding on the door, and I could see her through the window watching this poor college kid, let's call him Tyler, carrying boxes into what she thought was her room. The conversation through the door was intense. She was crying and begging, saying she had nowhere else to go. Then she switched to getting angry and threatening to call the cops about illegal eviction. I told her she was never a tenant. She was a temporary house guest who'd overstayed by about 6 months, and she needed to figure out her next steps like we'd originally planned. Then she called Jake. His phone started blowing up with calls from his mom, his aunts, everyone. Emma had told them I threw her out on the street with no warning, and that I was heartless and cruel to someone escaping abuse. This was actually the first time she'd told most of the family about the abuse. Before this, she'd just said she was having marriage problems. But now that she was desperate and angry, she was finally being honest about how bad things had been at home. Jake came home and we had this huge fight. He's furious with me for embarrassing his family and says I should have talked to him first. But I did talk to him, multiple times. He just kept making excuses and pushing the problem off. Now Emma's staying with Jake's mom, who's apparently been calling me a selfish bitch to anyone who will listen, and the whole family thinks I'm some kind of monster. Jake's barely talking to me, and honestly, I don't even know if our marriage is going to survive this. But you know what? Tyler paid his first month's rent yesterday, and actually asked if he could help with groceries. It was honestly such a relief to have someone in our house who actually contributes instead of just taking. I keep going back and forth between feeling like I did the right thing and feeling like maybe I really am a horrible person. Like, yes, Emma was in a bad situation, but also 8 months with a job without contributing anything. I don't know anymore. Maybe I should have handled it differently, but I was just so tired of feeling taken advantage of in my own house. The really messed up part is that Emma's husband has been calling Jake's phone constantly since this happened, like multiple calls a day. Jake won't tell me what he's saying, but I can see the stress on his face every time his phone rings. I'm worried about what this means for the business partnership and our finances, but also, I can't keep making decisions based on fear of that guy, right? Anyway, that's where we are now. Not sure if I'm looking for advice or just venting, but yeah, what a clusterfuck. Edit 1. To those asking if Emma had anywhere else to go, she has other family members including Jake's mom, where she's staying now, and at least 2 friends I know of who offered to help months ago. She chose to stay with us because it was free and convenient, not because she was completely out of option. Edit 2. For everyone asking about the business situation, Emma's husband has been calling Jake non-stop since she moved out, but Jake won't tell me what they're discussing. Given what happened before about him hiding important financial information from me, I'm honestly expecting the worst. But I can't keep our spare room hostage to someone else's abusive marriage forever, you know?